The goal of this podcast is to help you break in and thrive in advertising. And we do that every week by sharing the stories and advice of those rocking it on the other side. Today, we're excited to introduce Aaron Francois, Associate Strategy Director at Laundry Service and the visionary founder of Black Visionaries. Aaron's passion for social media and creative strategy has not only shaped successful campaigns for clients, but also empowered personal brands. Aaron's journey is one of purpose and impact. As the founder of Black Visionaries, he's dedicated to democratizing access to resources and information for Black professionals, creating a more inclusive and equitable industry. So in this episode, Aaron shares an array of brand building expertise coupled with invaluable career navigation tips. His unique approach is not just about winning strategies. It's about driving societal change through marketing, a field he believes is the most influential in shaping perceptions of brands, people, and culture. Growing up, Aaron saw misrepresentations of his culture in the media and made a promise to himself to change that narrative. Today, he is doing just that. His passion for culture and keen understanding of diverse perspectives enable him to develop more impactful work. So today, we talk with Aaron. He'll tell us his tips and tricks, how he stumbled his way and broke into strategy, a field that I'm often confused by and struggle explaining how to break into. So we will leave it to Aaron to tell us how to do that. And you're going to want to connect with Aaron. And to do that, or any of our past guests, really, all I ask you to do is leave a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts and a nice, perhaps 5-word review on Apple Podcasts. Then reach out to me on LinkedIn. My name is Gino Schellenberger, and I'll make a personal introduction. Now, on with the show. This is a great one, people. This is the Breaking and Entering Advertising Podcast, and as a usual, I'm your accomplice, Gino Schellenberger. Kick it, Mikey. All right. Aaron Francois. Cool
What's
name.
up, my guy? How you doing?
Good, man. I'm excited to talk with you. What are we going to talk about today? You want to talk about advertising, breaking in?
I
Sound good
mean,
to you?
I mean the combination. We can do them both, right? I think it only makes sense.
If you weren't in advertising, what job would you be in?
Damn. I mean, I was actually a professional dancer before advertising, so I'd probably be, still doing that.
How does that work? How do you break into professional dancing in 2 sentences?
And do it.
Where'd you do it at?
New York. So I'm born and raised here.
Mhm.
There's a dance community called the Light Feet community, which at a point was called Getting Light for the New Yorkers who know that. Like the Harlem Shake and like all that kind of all that entire era of dancing. So I was like pretty involved in that community.
Getting Light and then the Harlem Shake. I remember the Harlem Shake.
Yeah, it was a time.
Like
Anyone?
the dance trend, are we talking about?
No, not to see the two different ones.
Okay, good, good.
You're talking about like the social media,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
the
that
like
was
stuff.
wild.
Yeah, I'm talking about like the real New York City Harlem Shake. You should look it up after this discussion.
Okay. I'm Chicago guy, so that
Okay.
doesn't excuse me though, right?
Yeah, you got to get it's the cultural relevance part. That's
All right. And that's
we'll
what
get to that.
we're and I guess that kind of ties nicely cultural relevance. I mean, you are in strategy. You're an associate strategy director at Laundry Service. So I want to know about that. You need to be tapped into culture
Yes,
as a
sir.
strategist. You need to know the insights. You need to know what people are thinking, when they're thinking it, what's trending, what's not, so you can make decisions for better creative. Is that accurate? Did I just try to string together a transition there that
I
doesn't
think
make any sense?
I think you did it. I'll give you a B. I'll give
B.
you, you know,
B.
you like B's. But
Yeah, we're talking offline. Yeah.
I think that yeah, no, you pretty much hit the nail on the head. I'm shocked because usually when I tell people like, yeah, I work at laundry service, it's either, oh, I know them or wait, like why'd you go to washing clothes? So like I always have to
Mm.
explain the two. But yeah, laundry service is a full service style creative agency that does focus on social primarily. So for most of our clients, we are social agency of record. For me as a strategist, I really do view like my role and like a lot of the people in my department, our role is like creative strategists because we get the opportunity to be a Swiss Army knife, tapping into like brand strategy via like narratives and understanding tone, and also some calm. So figuring out where we want to show up, why we want to show up there, and what the audience is thinking. And lastly, like really partner with the creatives. Like I call myself the creatives bestie
Yep.
because like I don't just want to require you to do dope work. I want to do dope work with you. Right. So
Mhm.
how do we kind of work together to bring that to life and do things that make other people jealous they didn't think of it first? Because that's what puts a fire in my heart when I see something where I'm like, damn, that's crazy. Like I wish I would have thought of that. So yeah, that's a lot of the day to day, and we serve a good amount of clients. Some brands that people may not realize, like we're working on Gatorade, we're working on Google, we're working on some big campaigns. We did a big campaign with Google recently with Candace Parker for the Chromebook, the cloud gaming version of it, and super dope. And I even learned a lot about Candace and like just hearing her experience as a gamer. So I think that's the fun part about being a strategist too. Like it's like this continued quest for knowledge that as long as you're learning, you're always going to get better at your job. And
Yeah.
being at laundry services allowed me to do that tenfold.
I like what you were saying about being the bestie because the best strategists they don't just tee off the creative brief and then walk away. The best strategists are there. They're constantly refining and checking in with creatives and making sure that whatever the creatives are making, art directors specifically, copywriters. Let's if we're trying to connect with the audience here, the strategist should be checking in on those reviews internally to make sure the work is flowing nicely. It's on brand, on strategy,
Right,
and it's following all of the check boxes.
right, right. Yeah, for sure. And I think the biggest way to do that sometimes is just to be a human being, right? I think we fall in the habit of not making strong relationships because we think there's a method that you have to do it a certain way. There's a formula, and every person needs to be treated with this specific approach. And you forget that it's just human interaction. Like as if you met a person on the street, how would you have a random conversation? I'm of the mind, like I'll set up a call with someone and I will say, hey, set up 15 minutes, 20 minutes for us to chat. And my introduction to you, let's not talk about work. What makes you feel warm inside? Like, what's the thing that makes you happy, right? Like, I get a good gauge of what your creative and emotional sparks are. So now, when we're working on things, I know what is of value to you. What is the thing that motivates you and makes you feel like really good about the work that you're doing? And it allows us to work better together because we have a better sense of what each other's preferences are, and like what are the things that we generally hold to like a high standard when we're working on something.
And I'm kind of biased that uh, for those just starting out, that's why it's pretty important, I believe, to show up in person as much as you can because you it's just easier to gain that confidence and those connections in person when you're just starting out. Now, it doesn't mean all the like senior people are going to be there, but
Mhm.
you can start crafting those narratives and those connections if you're in person. But even if you're off and you're remote, like those quick calls, I just randomly call people when I see that they're green.
Yep.
They don't get a notification. They just get a
Yep.
ring of Gino, stress them out. But just setting up a quick call and doing all that. And I liked how you're demystifying the methodology. I think uh, to those that are on the outside looking in, they think that there's these specific frameworks and steps. But what you said was so perfect, and actually, I really enjoyed, and it's very true now that I'm working in the industry.
Mhm.
It's just human interaction, these conversations. Like, hey, we actually found this additional like insight or this other thing to tweak the brief, and that could be while people are having coffee in the morning.
Right. Right.
So I like that. There's not always just like this blueprint to follow.
I mean, it's even as simple as like you talk about your interests. You'll be surprised what you and another person may have in common. It's not only with creatives though; it's like with everyone on your team, right? Like your account people, your project managers, even like your other strategy peers. I've talked to people. I found out someone on my team is also interested in NBA 2K. I'm a gamer. I play 2K competitively, sometimes to a fault, right? So like knowing that and
Wait,
hitting,
do you like 2K? You said
yeah, yeah, NBA 2K.
what year is your favorite
What
one?
year is my favorite? I would say 20 because
Really?
partially because everyone was home due to COVID, and there were just so many people online playing. And I'm community minded in everything I do. So even in gaming, like the more I felt the power of community, the more I enjoyed the game.
Now that's a good answer. but it's not the best
I mean,
shooting
well,
function.
are you gonna shooting function? I mean, but shooting has gotten low key easier. If you're talking like 19 was good for shooting, right?
I, I like 16.
16 is for people that suck low key, but that's
That's
okay.
me. Yeah.
It's like, hey, you can like
It
16.
was so easy.
It didn't really take much to do that. Now,
Yeah.
now at 24, shooting is so much harder, bro. It's like
I can't believe it's already at 24. That like the last time I played like, a lot, I remember I was in college.
we
Like,
I went from being the marksman on my team to taking one entire month just to learn how to shoot. And I was adamant though. And now
mhm,
my percentages, they're where they need to be. Completely un-NBA realistic, but they are where they need to be.
okay, that's good to know. Good to know. Okay, so back on track though.
Back on
Yeah,
track. Back on track.
I just wanted to call you out there. 16 was the best,
Allegedly.
the easiest for sure.
That's what they said.
I like the blacktop mode. I like
Fair,
playing that with my buddies, like in
fair,
person.
fair. We
Yeah,
used to play blacktop on vacation. That's like
yeah,
a good it's a good thing to play with people that don't play 2K like
yeah, yeah. No, I'm definitely not that good.
that.
So where were we at?
That's up to you, man. You can
Yeah.
take us
So
wherever.
let's get back to laundry service. I think so you mentioned some great clients there. Recent work you're proud of was with Candace Parker, is that correct?
Yep.
Any other big ones that you want to give a shout out? I think everybody can go to their website. But you said create full service creative agency based in New York, is that accurate?
But they have an LA office and a New York office as
Okay.
well.
And independent or holding company owned?
We're under the Wasserman network, so Wasserman
Yeah.
sports and music entertainment.
Wait a minute.
Live, so
Wasserman's like, isn't that sports agency?
Wasserman owns laundry service. Yep. Which most people are like, to your point and your reaction, they're like, "Oh wow!" But
That's
yeah,
like Wasserman itself is what? Can you help me understand this? Because I've heard that there is like, I was actually on my way to Chapel Hill, and there was a parent there. His son played on the team at Chapel Hill, and he was signed by Wasserman. Is that? Am I connecting the dots here?
yeah, Wasserman is pretty much like a sports, music, and culture agency. They represent a lot of talent across each of those industries, and they're continuously ever growing. But laundry service is pretty much like think of if like how a lot of big companies have like they're now in-house ad agencies. Like think of laundry service as like now the ad agency arm of Wasserman's experience and what they can offer to other brand clients.
Right, right, right. So the sports, like, there's like agents and sports agents that
Mhm.
they
Yeah,
have in
exactly.
Wasserman.
And on the WA side, you'll probably have like an agent representing this particular person. And there may be moments where they work on an experience for bigger clients, i.e., like
Mhm.
I've done work with AT&T or Google in the past via Wasserman, but also for laundry services side as like social AOR, like we're like doing their day to day or larger campaign social activations and finding ways to do like more heavy campaign style work.
Right. Got it. Okay, that actually, I guess then what do you think makes it different working a part of the Wasserman network as opposed to a WPP, a more standardized traditional holding company? I guess what are the strengths, weaknesses? What are you thinking?
For sure. I think fortunately I worked in a couple. I worked in Omnicom, WPP, and
Yeah,
IPG.
the
So
usual suspects. Yeah.
I run the gambit, right?
Yeah.
But I think the so in terms of the differences from a weakness standpoint, I think there's not as many sister agencies. So like
Right.
it's getting to know more pieces of the business and
Are there other agencies, or is laundry service predominantly the
it's
creative?
Walter overseeing like they have other arms, but they're not like
Mhm.
agencies like how laundry service like an ad
Right.
agency. There's just other
Oh,
business units.
that's cool though. I think that's cool. You say that's a weakness, but it's also a strength. I'm sure you're
Well,
going to
I
get
mean,
to that.
yeah, well, of course. And I guess I have to use the word like weakness even lightly because I don't really think
Right.
it's weakness, but I just think it's
It's a differentiator. It's not a
let's say,
weakness.
yeah, let's just say differences more so.
Yeah. Because you
The
can't call up another agency and like collaborate on a brief
Mhm,
necessarily
mhm,
as easily. I get that. But then also, it's like you get all the best projects.
mhm,
Yeah.
mhm. So like when we get like an ad campaign, it comes to us, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's not like, oh, it's gonna come to WPP, but it's gonna
And
go.
then they're going to fight
Yeah,
over, the agencies are going to fight over. Like
mhm,
you can see some holding companies where agencies will pitch against each other.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
That's
a lot less of that experience, and also an ability to kind of dial down. I mean, dial in on the work that we're doing. as like the specialist, and also like being from my lens, like being a strategist and being able to like be the Swiss Army knife. I appreciate that it's not there's not as much of like oh, here's a comp strategy team, then here's the brand strategy team, here's an audience strategy. I've seen a lot of agencies get super segmented, and I've actually talked to someone about this recently. Like strategy is like the multiverse. I'm a nerd, so like that's where I go, and like there's so many different layers, and with each of those layers is a different outcome. But when you have like a person who can pretty much like mix and match each of those pieces, but they have a specialization area, that to me is of more value because you understand how everything works, but you know your bread and butter. And when
Yeah.
you put people together like that, you now have less worry because it's not as many chefs in the kitchen, right? So that's a big part of like what I think is very valuable about the way I approach strategy specifically, but even just generally like working on like on under Wasserman, getting exposure to like sports, understanding like how talent management works more specifically amongst my peers. And even at times, like I know people who get to work on both laundry service work and Wasserman projects. So like being able to do both and not
Yeah.
solely restricted to like the day-to-day ad campaigns is also a big part of it. And there's room to flex if that's your actual interest area. So that to me is super dope. I mean, it gives you an experience outside of the day-to-day ad agency.
I like it. I want to know about how you broke into advertising. And I know that you didn't necessarily start in strategy, but you broke in. So, at what point did you realize you wanted to make ads or be a part of the ad making process for a living?
Man, I think my route was very interesting because I think I got like hints of advertising and marketing throughout my life, and I never really like fell into it until like my senior year of college. I could kind of take you a step
Still
back.
early. I mean, you still got it though. I
Yeah,
mean, like
yeah, yeah.
some people, do 10 years in another industry and then
That
they
is
want to.
true. That is
So
true.
you
Not
found out
really skip.
in college, you said around your senior year that this was a good route.
Yeah, and I'm even then like I didn't go straight into strategy, but basically
Right. Right.
I had got into I took this course. I'll start in like I went to a community college at first, BMCC in New York. I took this course called Essentials of Advertising, and with that course, it was, if I'm not mistaken, like the class didn't apply to my major or something like that. So the financial aid I was receiving didn't cover the class, and they were like, "Hey, look, you can take this course, but we will not pay for it. It is all out of pocket. You figure it out." I actually stuck it through. I was like, you know what? This is one of the best courses I've ever taken. I paid for it out of pocket. Professor was amazing, and it paid off because it ended up turning into we having such a good relationship with the professor. They got me a job on campus. I was a tutor, and then when I went to my 4 year, I went to Baruch College in New York. I ended up working as a tutor my whole way through college. So I had a job where essentially I worked in a library basically. And when I didn't have students, I had time to study. So like
There we
I
go.
was getting paid to study, right? So that made the path a lot easier. Uh,
I love that little advice too. Like as an undergrad, like if you can
mhm,
find jobs in a library or
mhm.
that's close to your industry, even if it's not close to your industry, like library job,
Yeah,
do
yeah.
that. Get your
That's,
homework
that's,
done.
that's yeah, that lets you, get a nice quiet setting where you can focus, like just do it. And I even there, like, so I took the course, I got got the experience. And then I moved into my 4 year, joined a club. I was like vice president of a PR club on campus. And we hosted this PR firm, where one of the members of the PR firm for a panel networked my way through, had a conversation. We had a follow up. I'm like, hey, trying to secure an internship this summer. If you guys have any openings, would love to just get my resume floated. I don't obviously I don't expect any promises, but I'm just gonna be forthcoming. I really do want to, be able to get experience with you guys. I think the work you're doing is amazing. Gave him my resume, turned it to an opportunity, and I ended up working in PR as an intern. Right, went to PR. I was like, wow, my first internship. I also in the same breath was like, hell no, not PR. So and
That's
that
what's
was
beautiful about internships, right? You figure out what's good and what's
that's
not,
the
and
learn,
it's
man.
no harm,
That's
no
the learn.
foul.
That's I call it the trial and error period of your life, right? So you go internships are for figuring out what you do not want to do, and that
I
is
feel like
okay.
every day is a trial sometimes for me. I'm
That's
getting tried all the time.
such a fact, man. Such a fact. But
I'm just kidding. Yeah,
no, I mean that may be true. Some days are trials, but
yeah.
so with that internship experience, I did learn. I enjoyed like metrics, right? And like
What?
seeing how people
Get
were
out of
like,
here.
yeah, like how people were like navigating and experiencing things and like going from this destination to the next web destination and why, what would drive them to comment on a thing on social and following social conversation. But it was just like all the media of it all, right?
Yeah.
So
The
I went
storytelling behind the media and the journey
exactly. So I went
is
to
pretty dope.
I
Yeah.
went back to college, exactly, as you were being a little shady, but now you're like, "You know
I
what?
got it. You
It is
got
what
me.
it
I thought you were
is."
just like trying to get on an Excel and do pivot tables and then
Hey,
chop
man,
it up in there.
it was interesting because when I first went back to college, I was, like, in this, like, the MSAT competition
Yeah.
that
What was your brief?
we did Taipei. It was like this frozen Asian food.
Yep.
And I tried it after college, and I was like, "Hell no. Sorry, no offense to them."
You
Um,
can't advertise a bad product.
hey, I didn't know any better, man. I was like, "A product is fine."
Can I get worried about the NSAC. I'm not sponsored
Mhm,
by the AAF, but I was in it. But like these kids are spending a year on one brief,
mhm.
which is a great experience. I get that to know the full process, but if you know you want to be a strategist or you know you want to be an art director or copywriter at a full service ad agency like yourself, I get worried that these 1 year long briefs are a waste of time.
I
Now, I'm
would
not saying it's not
I would
always the case.
actually I would debate that only because I think it depends on the school you're at, but I never say any experience is a waste of time because I think I'm working on some projects that do take a year to go live. It's reflective of reality, right? And
It's
there's
true.
some projects you do that are quick turn and they're done in like 2, 3 months. Cool. All right, cool. Great working with you guys. I'll see y'all later. And there are other projects where it's like slow burn and it's gonna be big at the end of it all, but you're working from January all the way to December just to get this like Christmas campaign live. And that's also a realistic perspective.
Yeah.
So I would
Right.
I would kind of put that in perspective too, man, because it's if
But
you fall in love with the journey as well.
yep, I agree. But if you see that you're in a bad NSAC scenario where the brief is bad or the
Mhm.
team is not quite there, they're not dedicated, you don't have the proper leadership, then my POV is don't don't do it. Like if you don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, you were saying first off, you're currently getting paid for all
Mhm.
that hard work. These kids, I get worried that they're sticking it out just for sticking out's sake, which there's merit in that. But if
Yep.
you don't see a light at the end of the tunnel and you spend that and your other time is not being spent on other briefs,
Mhm.
then you could potentially see it through, get a decent experience, and then have a bad output
I
uh,
mean,
for one campaign.
in most cases, at the end of it all, you come out with credits though. Like it still contributes towards your graduation. And I think
Oh yeah, yeah,
that's the part to consider too, right? Because you
per
yes,
class, yeah.
it does like it can be daunting. And if it doesn't feel like it's not gonna work, it may not work. But
Mhm.
the NSAC is, in my mind, is no different than doing like the ad campaign class that isn't involved with the NSAC when the whole semester you're working on a group project
Mhm.
and at the end of it, you're going to present it and it may not even be the finished product. It's just, you're getting a bit more of a real time agency experience. But I think when it comes to stuff like that, like the NSAC or like even similar ad competitions at the collegiate level,
Yeah.
it's important to know or have a perspective on what your goal is coming out of that
Yes.
program and
Yes.
how you want to how you best can accomplish that goal if participating in that
Right.
particular thing.
Like if your goal is just to figure out what this process we call advertising is,
Mhm.
and you want to explore the roles and like you're still figuring it out,
Yep,
absolutely.
yep,
I'm talking for like the seniors in
yeah, yeah.
college where that or recent or seniors that know exactly they want to be a strategist and they haven't figured it out. I get worried that it is a waste of time if the work itself is not great. Uh,
Okay.
that's why we created the Crowbar Awards, which is our award show. It's
Mhm.
just it's for a year, 4 briefs a year, 3 months on a brief. It's creative only, so you can do it with two other people. It's quick hit, right?
Okay.
If you do four a year, you got pretty much a portfolio that you can kind
Mhm.
of hammer in if you work on it. And 3 months for a spec work is probably pretty fine. Like, that's
Yeah,
how we built
yeah,
that
yeah.
out. Yeah.
I also think to your point, well, one, dope that y'all are doing that. I actually didn't know about that, so would love to hear more after this.
Yeah.
But
We're always looking for guest judges, one a
okay,
quarter. So
dope, dope.
we can
Yeah,
talk.
I think even with that, like it goes back to the point of like choosing your battles, right? Like
Yep.
figuring out what best serves your career.
And the goal, yeah, having the
Mhm.
goal in mind for sure.
Like for me, I didn't really know media planning as in depth. I just was like, well, I know I like this thing. I did PR and I had a professor like, you should try media planning. So I spent the semester. I now had a year to learn a bit more about like where does a media player come in and what role do I play? And that gave me like an understanding of enough to say when I applied for MAPE, which is like the multicultural advertising internship program,
Yep.
I knew intentionally to click the media comms planner box
Nice.
as
Nice.
a thing that I versus like, you know, at that stage, you sometimes see all these roles and disciplines, and you're like, I don't even like which one do I pick? I want to be a strategist. Do I do
You had a
that?
route. You had it. You I like that you had a POV there,
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and it probably made for a better application
mm-hmm.
when you were applying. And they're like, "Yeah, Aaron's great. He knows what he wants. Let's
I
place him."
mean, that's what they thought, right? Like that's what I
Yeah,
felt. What I
and
sold them.
even if you're not sure and they think that, that's fine, right? You still got an internship out of it, I'm
Mm-hmm,
assuming,
mm-hmm. Yeah,
or a
I mean,
job.
it landed me, and I got into the MAPE program, which they place you at an internship for the summer. I landed at Whiting and Kennedy that summer, which was cool.
That's a pretty
Uh,
good one in Portland.
I ended up in New York, but
In New
either
York,
way,
that's a good one too.
it was still cool. Yeah, I
Yeah,
learned a
people
lot
look.
about myself, the work that they do as well, and also I went in like blank canvas. I actually didn't know what Whiting and Kennedy was
I know,
like.
I love that.
Contrary,
That's gonna be in the intro for sure.
contrary to most of like the ad junkies who are like, oh my god, advertising is my life, and I look, advertising is
The ad
dope.
nerds.
Yeah, and love them, love what they
Yeah,
do.
yeah,
I'm an ad nerd with external interests as well. I put it
you
that
have
way.
to be.
Uh,
That's a real. I think we need to redefine ad nerd. It
mhm.
should be somebody that's like culturally
Yeah.
in tune with the basics and the foundation of the classics and and the industry,
Mhm.
especially for strategists. Yeah.
I think we spend a lot of time like talking to ourselves, right? And not taking in from the outside world to make what we're doing more relevant. And that's where I like to learn the most, like going to exhibits, right? Like just engaging people, talking to people. Sometimes just laying in the park in the sun. Like I'm a big like summertime weather guy. So New
Oh,
York
I
summer
need that. Yeah.
and New York
Cool.
summer they are amazing. But like that's what helped me to really like take the experience all in holistically. And then when I walked into Wyden, I was like, well, I know I want to do dope work, and this is an opportunity that can help me get to that stage of my career. So I'll take what I can, meet the people I can. And I was able to grow not just professionally, but also personally there. It gave me confidence as well. And that confidence, the funny thing is, it kicked in later. Like it didn't kick in immediately into my next job. It kicked in like two, I'll say a job like 2 years, 2.5 years later after that, where I realized, oh, when I worked here, I felt X, Y, and Z way. What is stopping me from finding those feelings again to feel empowered in the work that I do, which was like freedom of expressing myself, right? Or showing up and talking about my things that I'm culturally interested in and how that can make the work we do better. And getting into the weeds of where our industry can go and talking about all the things that I do geek out about openly at work and not feeling like I need to hide like my personal interests, like as a nerd or a gamer or a sneakerhead, like all these things, all these layers, right? Being able to show that off more freely and openly and not feeling like it needed to be like church and state in the
Yeah.
way folks work. That a lot of that came from like that early interaction, but it wasn't activated until like I think someone had to keep giving me nudges, right? Like going to like conferences like Ad Color or thinking about my experience with Mate or just talking to my peers in general. Eventually, like and pre 2020, thank goodness, because I felt like after 2020, everyone was like, we want to be culturally sound. But like pre 2020, I just had like my own epiphany, and I'm like, you know what? Like the facade is up. You're like, this is the work I want to create. This is Aaron Francois. I love sneakers. I'm gonna wear them to work because it makes me feel empowered. Like how people have a power pose. I would say for me, it's like power footwear. Like when I wear certain kicks, I'm like, this is why I
Hmm.
feel like top of my game. So that was it was things like that that really helped me understand like where I could find my professional edge from and how does that continue to fuel me as I'm maneuvered on a day to day. And I went from media to eventually strategy by way of continuously listening to the voice in my head and trusting my gut.
I wanted I wanted to also kind of add my own experience with the podcast. I've been doing this for about 4 years now, and It didn't really spark confidence. It was a delayed confidence thing as well for me. Um, it wasn't until I got like some bigger name guests and got like, but that was just through consistency. I guess
Mhm.
the confidence in my professional life, I've always kept the podcast and my professional life separate because they are two different
Right.
entities. I own this on the side. I It never correlated. It never transferred to internally at where I work in my agency until like a year ago. It started to really kick in. Like I have this amazing podcast. Like people would talk about it. I would push it aside. Like, no, it's just something, a hobby. It's something that's important. But now I kind of own it and I'm trying to leverage it and help my people around me with it too. So that's that delayed confidence thing is interesting
Mhm.
as well. Sometimes
Mhm.
it takes like people bringing it up, or you go and see people that are proud of you and
Yep.
or reinforce you, or maybe you just need an epiphany on your own, right?
I
Or
think
a big moment to happen.
you said reinforcement. I just want to talk about that really quickly because I think like that reinforcement is so special, but it's also necessary. And we
Yeah.
don't what's that because we we look at it as like someone else validating you. And it's not always just about the validation. It's just like sometimes seeing is believing. Like sometimes you need to see someone else do it to feel like you can do it. Sometimes it's just coming to that point of like, can I do this and trying it? And when it works once, you have to believe it'll work again. Right. So like finding those micro moments and
Yeah.
thinking about how you can create like even bigger and more frequent moments for yourself to have that same feeling. Like I always say, like when it comes to things that make you happy or like finding your creative muse, think about a thing that you did as a child that made you feel like all warm and fuzzy inside. And how do you do the adult version of that? Right. So like that, and
Damn.
that to me is like a sense of like, oh, like getting validation or finding my special moments or my happiest points and turning that into something even bigger.
Mm. Can you give me an example?
That's why I game, man. I've always been a gamer. I would say that's one. Another thing that I've done since I was young is like hanging out with my peers. I think I'm very big into like communal events, like social things. So not just like gaming on like technology, but also game nights, like inviting friends over, doing like big board game nights and
Oh, I
Uno.
love that.
Yeah, yeah. I'm very traditional with it.
Yeah.
I'm a
Yeah.
very competitive Uno player. I will say that. Um,
You hide some cards
nah,
sometimes.
oh, bro, please. There's no need to hide cards when you're guaranteed to win. So, but I would say like doing things that allow me to activate that because I
Yeah.
remember when I was a kid, my happiest moments were like my family was like together, right, and we just got to enjoy each other's company. So I started to curate moments that allowed me to bring my peers together and enjoy each other's company as well.
Oh, you know what I do? I create these events for my friends. I
Mhm.
take like my PR planning and promotional skills, and I've done chili competitions. I've done a cocktail competition where I made myself
Oh,
a judge. I actually got a hot dog eating competition going where we gave out T-shirts to the winners, and we got a company. You guys have Nathan's. We have Vienna in Chicago. Vienna
okay.
donated 150 hot dogs, and we raised money
Oh,
for charity. So I like to do those too, like
that
these
is
little
dope.
fun. Thank
That's
you. Yeah.
dope.
It's fun, man. Like to make signage and like hype it up. Like people will be like, hey, I have a
Mhm.
birthday coming up. Can you help me plan it? I'm like, yeah. Especially those September birthdays.
Oh,
When
yeah.
everybody's got the same September birthdays, they're like, I need to differentiate. How can I do it? I'm like, all right, we'll need $1,000 for a bar tab and some t-shirts.
It's
But
a- it's-
yeah. But I like that. So, but you broke into, so you got into media planning from the MAPE, you said,
Mhm.
and didn't want to stick with that, or strategy was your route, I guess, widen, you gain your confidence. But how did you get to the strategy part, right? When did you find out you love strategy?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it was so 2019. We had founded our first ever like ERG, which at the time, this is like before everyone's like, oh, let's do an ERG. Like we need to raise money,
Yeah. Yeah.
pre 20. We're just like, hey, we're trying to do this thing in service of the Black professionals who are within this network. We just kind of like it was crazy because we sent this like cryptic email. Me and a friend of mine who we worked together. When I say friend, like at the time it was coworker friend, but
Yeah.
that was like really good friends. But we sent this email to all the people who were like Black identifying,
Yep.
like, hey, we're trying to start this ERG. Are y'all game? Like, let us know. Everyone was like, hell yeah, let's do it. We started,
Employee resource group, everybody listening outside
yes,
of the, yep.
all your resource groups, apologies, you know?
Yep. No, you're good. I know. I just want to make sure they know. Um, so you sent out this email.
The employee led resource group. So he's like, set up an email. Everyone was like, yeah, let's do it. We started hosting like intimate social gatherings, right? And that's sounds fine and dandy. What does that have to do with strategy? It it allowed us to eventually take that understanding and transfer it into like business results, right? Like people felt better at work. Their output was becoming even more efficient on a day-to-day basis because they had a sense of community. They felt supported at the
better
agency.
ideas. Yeah.
Yep. They felt like they were able to communicate more what they needed or wanted to see for their
Damn.
growth.
Yeah.
In addition to that, we just started to get tapped for projects that as brands wanted to be more culturally relevant. It wasn't just for the Black community, but just from an inclusion standpoint in general, we would start to talk with like leadership and other arms of the agency to really get perspective on what does it look like to be an intentional, not just an ally, but an advocate for diverse communities or underrepresented groups across the board, eventually sparking the creation of different ERGs like servicing people with disabilities, women, LGBTQ plus, like pretty much like all these different subgroups that existed. And then it went from there to being a part of the review process where like people get graded on their DEI impact in the agency. So that
There
was
we go.
to be able to
Yeah.
do that. All in all, I was like, wow, this is great. I ended up getting promoted to a media supervisor, but at the end of the day, it was still media supervisor, right? And
Sure.
a day job,
Promotion. That's good.
it was amazing, right? I was grateful for that. But I also think the the day job was get this work live and get it in front of as many eyeballs as possible. But the creative was already done. When I was
Right.
learning the most about being a lead for the ERV was the creating. And I wanted to find a way to fuse the two. There was unfortunately not a swim lane for me to do that. But I was like, damn, like there's so much cultural understanding and learning that I have like up here that I'm not able to pour into this work, particularly in this space. So then I made like the adamant decision to pivot into strategy. So the game plan at that moment was like, okay, I know I want to be a strategist. So many levers to pull. Which one is the best for me? I called up every person I knew who was a strategist that I was like pretty close to, started picking their brain. Like, this is what I do for work. What do you do for work? What are some things you think are transferable that I'm doing right now? How should I frame my resume? What is the best area for
Find
me to,
those champions.
yep,
Yeah.
and finding people, not just champions, but people who will really share and not gatekeep information in general. Because I think people, you'll find some folks who they may be a little nervous about giving information, but you also have to, in order to get their guard down, be willing to give more than you take. I think sometimes we get in the habit of taking, and not lending ourselves or our resources to people as well. And I'm always open to like whatever you need, let me know. Like I'm here for you. And after that, it turned into me just like chatting with a bunch of people across different disciplines, and they were like, "Yo, you should consider comms planning, comm strategy." At the time, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I did that at Wyden," and that
Perfect.
to that point, right? Like I'm like, "Oh, I did that at Wyden because it was a hybrid media planning, comms planning role." I know comms planning was a little bit less in the weeds of like the budgeting and Excel spreadsheets. I lived in Excel for like 3 years or 3 or 4 years already in my career in that point, and I was like, "Yeah, I think it's time to make this pivot." It's cool to
Yeah.
to be able to do like the spreadsheets, and it taught me a lot. I do plan my vacations in Excel, but I also was like, hey, now this is a skill set. This is what I've learned: how to read data, how to synthesize it, how
Yep.
to turn it into a story,
Interpret it.
right?
Digest it. Yep.
And then taking that perspective and the cultural nuance I have and fusing them made
Yeah.
me a more equipped comp strategist than some of my own peers, because while they can take some data, they didn't know how to slice it, cut it, even pull it in general and read it off
Damn.
the form.
That's
So
like this is like the perfect storm for comms planning and like
yeah.
that strategy. This
Well, in my mind, man, like once you learn how the money works, you're set for good, you know. So that's always what I tell people. Like understand the money. Like what is when it goes, well, when the money comes to you, how can you make work that actually can come to life? Because I
yeah.
think when you don't understand budgets, you don't understand how to make like salvageable ideas, because you just go big idea. This sounds fire. This is what we're gonna do. And the pilot's like, well, we only got like 100K, so we can't actually like get this gigantic blimp to fly
It changes things.
from Europe to the US. But
Yeah, it humbles things. Yeah.
yeah, so like learning the financial piece of it allowed me to help the team come up with ideas that were actually executable and also like still dope in its
Yep.
own right. So that was where the media part of my brain came into play. And then in that moment, I worked very closely with creative, and I was like, yo, like, yes, this is it. Like, this is what I want to keep doing, like more of this.
So you got the media supervisor promotion. How did and you made some calls and then you identified comm strategy was the next pivot. How'd
Mhm.
you do that?
I ended up after I figured out comp strategy was the next pivot. I just started shooting my resume out. I started chatting with people. I believe in not always chatting to ask, but just chat to chat, right? And continuing to do what I was already doing. I'm not just talking to strategists now. I'm talking to people who work in places that may be of interest, understand their journey, understand their experience, and the kind of work that they're into doing. And if the opportunity presents itself or it feels right, I say, hey, I'm actually in the market for a new role. Would love if I could float my resume by you.
So
Uh,
you're having conversations, you're connecting with people outside the current organization you were
mhm,
working. Yeah.
mhm. Yeah, and
And
eventually they'd be like, yeah, like, hell yeah, send it over. And I'd send my resume over to folks. And I had a very good friend of mine who was a part of like the Ag Color Future cohort when I did that in 2018. And they were like, yo, like, bet, send me your resume. Sent it straight to department head. And then they just like turned into a snowball of interviews out of nowhere.
I love it. And then you got the job?
And then I got the job. You had to secure the bag, bro.
And where was that at?
That was at RGA.
In New York?
Yep. Yep. I worked in RGA in New York
When were you
uh,
there?
for about 2 years, from 2021 to early this year, actually. So all these services are a very recent thing. I started there in March.
S- Got it. I was at RGA pre-pandemic.
Okay.
And
Okay.
they had a really cool office. I'm not sure what's going on, if they still have that New York office, but it just came up with my Snap memories. I was like,
Mhm.
"This place is cool."
Yeah, I was there like fresh in the middle of it, right in the thick of it.
Yeah,
And
online, yep.
I'm sure we know some of the same people.
Oh, I don't know anybody.
Oh,
Well, I just was there as, like, a bright-eyed young
okay. Good to know.
tour. Yeah.
He's like
Um,
purely execution.
I was just, like, trying to figure out stuff. Amazing. What would you tell yourself now that you know you were you this might be the most important part for listeners, right?
Mhm.
Um, for those that want to go straight in planning, what would you say to them to break in directly? Is there a direct route from college or maybe not even college?
Mhm.
Um, from college right into comms planning, how can they do that? How can they expedite this process? They listen to this podcast, they connect with you, they know that they love comms planning, they did their research, they know what agencies, what can they like, how can they differentiate themselves?
For sure, man. I think, well, it may sound a little cliche, but I think the first thing I tell anyone is to learn to fall in love with the journey, because when you fall in love with it, it feels less difficult as you're navigating the changes. That being one, two, uh, just continue making relationships, and you have to water your seeds in order for them to become flowers. And when you forget that, you're like expecting for like growth and plants to sprout from a seed that you just threw into the ground and said like, "Hey, look, I did that." Right. And it doesn't matter if you're looking to go into an adjacent industry and make the pivot, or if you're looking to go straight into the role. Your relationships are going to get you farther than any set of qualifications. And it sounds unfair, but it's also realistic. And I think this industry has shown a lot of that to many people time and time again. We're especially now, like, we're in an industry where a lot of people who are overqualified are applying for roles because they straightforward need the income, and that is the reality. So make relationships with people and be intentional about how you do that. So that way, when an opportunity arises, you remain top of mind, but also for the right reasons.
Yeah. I guess how can we do that? I mean, like people in college then,
Mhm.
how can they make these meaningful connections, like going to these conferences?
I will interrupt you really quickly though.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think being in college, to me, that's a superpower, bro.
I
Like,
know. I
you
know.
have the opportunity to say, I have no idea what you do. Please talk. And like, people
Yeah.
are 95% of the time, in my experience, people are going to talk to you because the fact that you're a college student, and you're probably the most interesting part of their day in a long time, right? Because uh, yes, our industry is dynamic and we do all this different work, but at the end of the day, like, the general setup is similar. Like, you wake up, you get into the team status, you get an update, something didn't go according to plan, thing gets rectified, you go to bed, you do it all over again the next day, right?
Oh
And
my
that's
goodness.
oh, that's really the add to that, the add template, right? So you
Yeah.
add, like more flavor to the day. It makes someone more enthused to have that conversation. So take it
Yes.
like go in not knowing. Nobody expects you to be the expert.
Yeah. I like that. It's a good reminder. And there's all these different organizations that you're a part of, and even you founded. Be remiss if I didn't bring up Black Visionaries. Tell me
Appreciate
about that.
it.
How can that help people connect and break in and thrive in advertising?
For sure, man. So Black Visionaries is my brain baby. It is an organization that I founded with the original intention of just bringing together some dope Black professionals that I knew that within my network that I felt were just 1 or 2 degrees separated, just having not done similar
You
programs
you
or
know them around, you've seen them on the
exactly,
LinkedIn's and
exactly.
other maybe not directly, so you want to pull these people in?
Yep. And I think so for me, the first Black Visionaries event was a Black Visionaries brunch. That's how it all started.
Brunch.
I had got a financial stipend from an award that I received from the 4As. It was called the Billy Davis Award
Yeah.
for MAPE alumni, basically. And it came with a financial stipend. I used that money to host the first brunch. I brought 30 people that I had faith would probably show up. I was like, y'all are my people. I'm trying to do this thing. I just want to celebrate you because you're doing so much dope work. And I want to expose you to this community of doers just like yourself. Here, you don't have to pay anything, just like come,
Yeah.
and it was very makeshift. I chose this like venue in Brooklyn somewhere randomly, like too. It wasn't even like next to a train or anything, but like everyone, they showed up. Out of the 30 people I invited, 29 people showed up, right? To tell you like how tight the community was.
You
And
invited 30, 29 showed up?
yep.
Who didn't show up?
And we don't even have to get
No,
into
I'm
that.
just kidding. That's
We
amazing.
we ain't
That's
even
messed
gotta go. No, but
That's great.
it was amazing, man. And they were like, "Yo, this was like one of the most transformative experiences I've ever been through," because the tables were even set up where like everyone sits with someone they don't know. Like
Yep.
because I had a better sense of who knows who. I like do the table design where,
Intentionally.
yeah, where you're
Yeah.
like you're sitting with complete strangers, but there's curated conversations. So you're talking about like, what do you want your legacy to be? What are your current obstacles?
Damn.
Um, like what is like the hardest thing you've had to accept along your journey? Like things like that get really deep. But you're
Yeah.
talking about that with strangers, right? So now
Yeah.
you create what I like to call universal accountability, because once you say it, that it becomes the realest thing ever. And that was like a big part of like what we did there. Now after that event, everyone's like, "Yo, this was dope. So when's the next one?" I'm like, "Oh,
Ah.
like I was like, this was just gonna be a one-time deal," but they were like, "Hell no! Like we're not gonna let you get off the hook like that." So I did what I knew how to do, which was do comm strategy, reach my audience, and use social media. I tapped a mentee and one of my best friends who was also my roommate at the time. So I was like, "Yo, I'm trying to do this thing, and I really need your help because I'm only one man. Can y'all help me?" And we just started like creating content on social, right? Like just relatable video. You can check us out at Black Visionaries.
I gotta watch all these videos.
Yeah, yeah, they're super. They're pretty funny. I won't lie.
Me
It was
when the
like
new hire asked me
it,
who they
was-
replaced. What does it say?
Jules was my first love.
Oh,
I like to remember that.
oh my gosh. That's good.
they were like, but because of that, it was all like corporate slash relatable ideas, but
Yeah.
also veering on the side of like servicing corporate professionals, entrepreneurs, because professional in itself is something that is a bit more fluid than we tend to realize. So
Yeah.
we did that, and then we were like, cool, we did this one branch. Now we need to think about what are other things we can do. We started partnering with other brands who had similar missions of bringing together Black professionals or
Hmm.
professionals of color in general. While our community was distinctively like the Black professional community, we were like, at the end of the day, the distribution of resources needed to be something that we can provide to anyone at most stages of their career, and not just like entry level. We're talking like career vets that want to give back and find ways to mentor, and even the mid level, because I think mid level professionals actually are the ones who go through the hardest struggles sometimes, because they're in this awkward middle spot where everyone kind of forgets about them, and it's like sink or swim. Like, hey, you ain't entry level and you're not seasoned enough where you could call the shot. So
Yeah.
figure it out, my guy. And that was a big part of like how we navigated that. We turned those partnerships into eventually the second annual brunch, which was earlier this year. We went from 30 people to 90. We brought in some dope
That's
sponsors.
triple, I
Yeah,
believe.
yeah. Threefold, my guy. But
Incredible.
it was we were able to bring some partners in. So we partnered with like CAA, Ad Color, the One Club for Creativity, the Fourier Foundation, the Urban Male Leadership Academy at BMCC. So like a lot of these dope partners who just they believed in the vision and they were invested in helping us bring it to life. And that turned into other events later in the year. We did an initiative called Community Highlights, which as people were getting impacted by mass layoffs, we started to create like virtual resumes for them, like a one sheeter. So
Nice.
we would just fill out a form and we would highlight you on our social and blast it out. So we ended up doing a lot more than like that one brunch, right? Because the goal is to create for the community. So Black Visionaries is really it's a it's like a peer-to-peer platform that allows everyone to not just like find resources or access to community, but also feel actively poured into by way of other people understanding, connecting, and also getting from us and learning from, what our community is doing on a day to day. So we have quite the growth path. We also have a LinkedIn group now. So feel free to hit me up if you want to join it.
I love it. And I love when it's so easy, right? Like people are curious, like how do you balance podcasts or what you're doing with your full-time job and all the other stuff you love to do. But when you have like a North Star that's so beneficial, it's human and easy to get
Mhm.
on board with, that's guiding you. I'm sure it's kind of like it just keeps you motivated. It's not sometimes it can feel like work, I'm assuming, right?
Mhm.
Because you have to
Yes,
do stuff, right? Of course,
sir.
it's like there's tasks and there's deadlines, but you can get reminded very easily like this is so beneficial, so impactful for so many people. So
Yeah.
I'm assuming that that also resonates with you.
I also think, I mean, yeah, man, but I also would say you start to learn I'm of the mind that when you love something enough, you learn to find time.
Oh
Like,
yeah.
that's point blank. Like
You know,
it's,
people like what you said about the student thing or really any conversation.
Mhm.
My thing is I can always find 30 minutes, 15 to 30 minutes every day, no matter what, to talk
Yep.
with somebody.
Yep.
I don't believe that somebody has booked for 24 hours straight.
Yep.
I can
Exactly.
always find 15 damn minutes to talk with somebody. Hey, quick
Exactly.
phone call. What are you thinking? What's on your mind? Boom, I can figure it out.
And it's truly that simple. And there are ways to streamline it. Like I made a Calendly link, right?
Right.
So if you don't need, I don't even have to like go look at my calendar anymore. Like
Right.
put this link, use it to your heart's desire.
And even beyond
It's,
the link, I'm like, if there's nothing on this Calendly, I can figure it out. I can always find 30 minutes.
exactly. And we'll figure it out because
Yeah.
some of those blocks are for mental maintenance, right? So like
Yeah, of course.
as you go through that, you
And I'll
learn
sacrifice some of that mental maintenance to help somebody out,
it's
like
helping
my
somebody.
own. Yeah.
For me, that's mental maintenance, right? Like
Yeah.
knowing that I'm helping someone also is the thing that makes me feel good. And I
That's
think that
why I said before we record, this is like my little therapy session.
and I think not a lot of people understand that, man. Like it's okay. Sometimes the work is the thing that makes you feel better because
Yeah.
it's in service of creating for somebody else. And I do enjoy that part of like working on Black Visionaries. And even now, like I said before, my team was just me and two other people. Now our team was like 20,
There we go.
20 volunteers and like folks who were across different things like content and creative and operations and business strategy and the whole nine. Because
Growing
you
because
learn
they see that vision and they want
Mhm.
to, they feel the same way. They want to help out.
you learn that when people see faith or have faith in what you're doing, they're gonna be like, yo, like easily, how do I get on board? It's not like
Yeah.
you can cheap anymore. And even for you, and anyone in general, like as you're growing what you're doing, it's important to also realize you're not the best at everything, right? You're the best at your thing. So the more you can tap people who can help you get better in areas you are excelling in, the more everything else you're doing will grow.
I love it. How can people get involved with Black Visionaries, learn more about you, have these conversations with you? What's the best way for them to contact you?
Definitely on LinkedIn, very active on
Good.
LinkedIn. I'm a
Leave a
creative.
note. Leave a note, listeners, that you listen to Aaron's B&E podcast. I'm sure
That's it.
it always helps when you leave a little note when you're connecting. If you go to personalize invite and there you get like
Mhm.
200 characters.
Put it in the personalized invite. Put it in if you got a DM me, you should put it in the subject line. But
Yep.
100% down to chat all the time on LinkedIn. Follow Black Visionaries. So it's at Black Visionaries Lead on Instagram. And if it's on LinkedIn, it's just Black Visionaries. Both have a gold V as the logo. So
You
if
good?
you're for us, you'll find us. And just in general, like I'm always here for career advice. I enjoy, pouring back into other people because I remember how I felt when someone did that for me. So pay it forward because you can never pay it back.
Love that. Thank you so much, Aaron, for coming on.
Of course, man. Thank you for having me. It was a pleasure.